profession has lost its attraction among our kids. So in Philippine Business for Education, we have launched a modest two-pronged approach. One is to try and improve the image of teachers using popular entertainment as our means. We have put together an advertising campaign that tries to, I guess, convey the message that it is noble and it is appropriate for young kids to aspire to become teachers. And to go hand in hand with this campaign of trying to uplift the image of teachers so that more young kids will aspire to be teachers, we've also launched what we've called the 1,000 Teachers campaign, which is to try and mobilize resources for 1,000 scholarships for teachers to allow the best and brightest high school kids who want to be teachers but do not have the means for it to be entitled not only to scholarships, because the schools that we're partnering with are providing the slots in their education courses, but to also give them a living allowance and stipends, because oftentimes, even while tuition is free, the cost of living is so expensive that poor kids still cannot take advantage of these scholarships. So we've put these packages together, and we're trying very hard to try and improve at least the flow of high school students going into the teaching profession, and hoping to slowly attract more and more of our young kids who are outstanding and are good Filipinos to consider teaching as a profession. Because if we are unable to address this issue of quality of teachers, I think it will be very difficult to uplift the quality of education as a whole. So, Dr. Labadan, I think that initiative of yours is most welcome, and I'm very happy to hear that it's already progressing. And we on the private sector are also doing our part to try and do something about it.
Okay, we will go to UP Los Baños. UP Los Baños, please come in.
Good afternoon, this is UP Los Baños. I have a student here, his name is Carlo Cabuhat, with a question for Mr. Del Rosario.
Go ahead, please.
Good afternoon, sir. What concrete measures can a mere student like me do to stop corruption?
You know, there are all kinds of volunteer organizations that are already doing what may appear to be little things, but I think the important thing is for citizens to do what they can within their means. Dr. Magdaleno Albarracin, who's very active here in UP, in your Centennial Commission, is in fact one of the citizen volunteers in our coalition against corruption. He very diligently sits in one of the bids and awards committees in the Department of National Defense, spending hours going through the bids to make sure that they are, as much as we can assure them to be, that they are above board and done honestly. Now, at the level of individuals, let me cite some examples. The delivery of textbooks, for example, used to be a major problem. And one of the groups in the Coalition Against Corruption, I believe it's the Transparency and Accountability Network, or the Ateneo School of Government, there are groups there tied up with the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts of the Philippines, and also with the national movement, the NAMFREL. And what they did was they mobilized citizens to simply monitor the delivery of textbooks all over the country. But that meant quite a bit of organizing to make sure that they knew when the textbooks were supposed to be delivered. They knew what the quality was expected of those textbooks, the count that was supposed to be delivered in each site, and to physically monitor the delivery of those textbooks. Now, that sounds like a very simple undertaking. But if you can imagine more and more of our students and our citizens getting themselves involved in activities of this sort, helping out in whatever small way, then we will begin to make progress. This is one of the, I guess, more striking examples of how citizens can participate. And as a result of this activity, the delivery success ratio of the Department of Education has significantly improved, and there are fewer and fewer complaints of non-deliveries or of deliveries of substandard textbooks. So that's the kind of example that can be undertaken, and you need not wait for others to start the effort. You can start on your part. Another good example is at the local level, there's a lot of funds that are being spent through the IRA allocations and through the pork barrel expenditures also. One can organize citizens groups to watch over the projects that are being undertaken, to make sure, number one, that they are in fact being undertaken, and number two, that the quality of the projects are according to the standards that are specified. That kind of thing is very much available, and it lends itself to a large number of people doing what may appear to be little things, but when you put all of these efforts together, it does amount to something. So that's what I would encourage you as students to do as a starting point, and then get involved with other organizations and perhaps try to aspire to do other things as you move on.
Thank you. I understand UP Manila is back. UP Manila, please come in.
Good afternoon from UP Manila. We have a question from the Dean of the College of Allied Medical Professions, Professor Cynthia Isaac.
Sir, how do you see concerns on health and health human resources to be a part of this coalition to end corruption?
The initial thing that comes to mind is the example I spoke of earlier is also applicable. And in fact, one of the projects of the Coalition Against Corruption has to do, for example, with the delivery of medicines in government hospitals all over the country. It has to do with, number one, the procurement of medicines, because there is quite a bit of corruption on the procurement side, and finally on the delivery. And then I guess the use of expired medicines is another item that can be watched. So there are all sorts of activities that are available, even just at that level. Of course, there are many other things in terms of the medical profession that one can consider at the level of professional organizations that one can consider. I guess there are practices that one hears of that one might want to discuss at the level of professional organizations. I guess I pose them as questions rather than as accusations, but for example, to what extent do doctors prescribe procedures and tests that are not really needed by patients but are needed for the bottom line of the hospital, or because these have an impact on the fees that are charged? These are the types of questions that one hears about, and I guess are appropriate for discussion, perhaps in academic circles and also in professional organizations. I think one's imagination, you can allow your imagination to just think about all the things you encounter on a day-to-day basis, and you can figure out things you can do.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. We have UP Mindanao. Moderator is Professor Roberto Alabado III.
Okay, good afternoon. We have a question from the floor from Dr. Victor Bongar, Director of Student Affairs, San Pedro College. The question is, to what extent the schools be blamed for not teaching our current leaders in the ill effects of corruption while they were still studying?
Can we blame the schools? To what extent can we blame the schools for not teaching the current leaders the ill effects of corruption while they were studying?
That's not so easy to answer. I think it's a problem that really has its roots in society at large, perhaps. It starts perhaps from examples in the family and of parents. It starts with what observes in school, of course, and how one observes society behaves towards those who are criminals and those who are trying to behave. I, for example, have a very strong belief that for as long as crime pays, people will pursue crime. For as long as criminals are not brought to justice, for as long as tax evaders get away with tax evasion and smugglers get away with smuggling, then more and more of our people will say, hey, that's not a bad deal. In fact, for as long as we continue to give honorary doctorates to people who are known to be not particularly the best among our citizens, then what are we doing? We are honoring, I guess, those who do not deserve such honors. So I think there's a lot to be said for all sectors of society, that it has to be a concerted effort. Sure, schools have part of the blame, but so do parents, so do all of us when we turn our back on corruption, or when we accept the reality of corruption and say there's no other way, and we fall prey to it ourselves. I guess all of us have something to pay for it. I almost kidded UP, by the way. I toyed around with the idea of starting my lecture by saying that UP is very proud of the fact that so many of our presidents and so many of our Supreme Court justices and so many of our politicians are graduates of UP. And I was threatened to ask, so why are we the way we are? But at the centennial dinner, they were already kidding about it among themselves. So I thought, at the donors' dinner. So I said I should be more polite today. No, I thought it would be more productive to issue the challenge that I did.
Thank you, sir, for your consideration and being polite. We have a question from Dr. Nememso.
Of course, we did not need a law. We did not need a new charter to become the national university. UP has, in fact, been the de facto national university. But there is only so much that the national university can do. For example, we recognize our need to promote science and technology education. But the quality of the students that we got is affected by the quality of teaching at the especially high school level. Now, what can we do? What can especially the Philippine Business for Education do, to stop the recruitment of about 1,500 of our best science and education teachers by the United States? There they are made to teach in schools where white teachers do not want to go. We talk about the need to improve the teaching of English. But the best English teachers in high school are being recruited as maids to Hong Kong and Singapore. And I heard, I have not verified this, I just heard it yesterday, but it really disturbed me that some of our own young faculty members are preparing to leave in order to become call center operators. I do not know how extensive this is, but, well, you have partly answered this question, so treat it as a rhetorical question. But this is really our problem. It's not just upgrading the teaching skills, but it's really not just attracting young people to the teaching profession. It's also retaining them in the face of economic competition from other institutions and other countries.
Yeah. You know, Dr. Nememso, our own discussions in Philippine Business for Education, unfortunately, I guess lead us to conclude that it's probably something we just have to accept as a reality for now, that so many of our outstanding young graduates seek better fortunes abroad. Because I don't think it honestly would be fair to try and prevent them from leaving when the opportunities are available to them outside this country and they are not available here. I guess there are two things I'd like to say. One is, I am inspired really by what's happening in places like China and India, where after seeing so many of their citizens also seek their fortunes in other countries in the past, eventually when they see that their national leadership is a leadership that can inspire them and that they can trust in, and if they feel that there is in their own country an environment where their sincere efforts will be